our company really has focused on both sides, knowing that at some point there's really convergence between technology and the domain. So goes without saying that any app that we develop should have that one. Now, becoming more and more popular would be UX designers. So that's the user experience, which make the use of mobile apps really something pleasant, and it would really motivate you to use apps. So that's another component, and it's really the psychology of using apps as well as reading all of those things on a small application screen. So I think, yeah, it is important to have both domain, and if it's healthcare, then it's really from the clinical perspective that we really take in. And then, of course, on the technology side, coupled by UX designers on the psychology side of things.
And there is a graveyard of medical apps, hundreds of thousands with 10 downloads and so on. And I would say that it's difficult for the layperson to figure out which one to use. The kind of rule of thumb that I would take is, firstly, I would look for a problem looking for a solution rather than a solution looking for a problem. And in fact, I am in particular taken by really technologies that have emerged from universities that come out of patient groups, because these are genuine problems that the end users have encountered and they try to solve using technology. The second is that doctors are, while innovative in some ways, are conservative in other ways, and the peer review process, academic publications, these are important to demonstrate that the app not just looks nice, but it actually works. It has clinical outcomes. And lastly, in a sense, getting the approval from FDA is important, or any regulatory body, and just as important, is there a business model behind it? Because in much of today's world, the healthcare provider, whether the hospital or the institution, gets paid for physical services rendered. Most of us would take phone calls and emails almost as a value-add free service. But it's not surprising that in most healthcare systems around the world, the moment there's any complexity, the kind of automatic reaction is, why don't you come into the emergency room, why don't you come into the clinic? Partly because of the uncertainty, but mainly because that's the only way for us poor guys to earn some money.
On the infrastructure side, Jeff, from the very basic, we're in Globe as a company. We're practicing what we call ISO 22301, which is the business continuity. So at least every quarter, we do a business continuity drills, when we simulate if our systems goes down, our towers goes down, our network goes down. We try to ensure that the business will continue, not only from a technology perspective, but also from a manpower perspective. We are extending this to our customers as well, to our data centers, and to our cloud environment. Now, if the redundancy that we provide nationwide is not enough, that's why we also partnered with cloud providers like AWS, wherein you can put redundancy outside the Philippines. If you like, you can put some of your data or your workloads in Australia, you can put it in the US, or put it in probably in Japan. So you can't get more redundant or in terms of business continuity than that, having a worldwide footprint. Okay. And now in terms of cybersecurity, we do have a practice. We've invested a lot in our advanced security operations centers, wherein we do not only do network penetration testing, vulnerabilities scanning, we also do have in-house, what we call white hats, that things like the hackers that will help you pinpoint where your vulnerabilities are, whether it may be in your software, your databases, or probably in the processes that you currently have.
So, did you have a question for Bidham?
I don't think he actually had a question for me. I'm happy to take the time to just...
Yeah, I was just taking my time here too, so...
I didn't hear the question, but I can go off to the trilemma side. when I look at healthcare in the U.S., and while there's obviously focus on quality, access, and cost, really, I don't think there was a lot of push for quality and access originally. It was primarily cost, and that was the focus, at least the center part of my presentation. Even if you look at macro, here's a regulation with huge bipartisan support, like 21st Century Cures Act. Virtually everyone on both sides of the aisle wanted it, as opposed to very polarizing feedback on the Affordable Care Act. It passed with flying colors, well, virtually 100% wanting that. That's a quality initiative, a quality law, but not really. It's cost neutral. It's all focused on cost, and you can go through the law and regulation, replace the word quality for cost, and you see the same set of information. That's been the real driver, at least from the U.S., because we have an unsustainable market right now.
But how do you see the accountable care organizations affecting the quality reporting and also addressing the trilemma that Jeff mentioned earlier?
I think they're going to struggle for a little while until we get serious documentation under control. Doctors don't want to document yet. They much less want to code or bill, but they certainly struggle even at the current level to document the information. That's why clinical documentation improvement is so big, why documentation has become such a big part, and why, at least for our organization, we're still not seeing this major shift away from coding. EMRs haven't been the promise they were always going to be. And you're seeing a huge influx in needs for scribes, and we see that as a kind of a defensive play for ABC. Scribes can input right at the EMR if you teach them coding and billing and some of the other things, and clinical documentation improvement, they can not necessarily replace, but do some of this work themselves.
So basically, it's offering a great opportunity for the players out here.
Yes.
And maybe additional words of wisdom about ACO, because this is practically, while it has been mentioned several times in the past, it's still a new term for us. We say ACO all the time. We say ACA, and sometimes we interchange the two acronyms. So maybe some additional information about ACOs for our audience.
Well, I'm not going to be the best person to talk about ACOs in general because I don't have enough experience working with them specifically. I'll leave it up to somebody else that wants to provide more information on ACOs.
Okay. Okay. So Jeff, thank you for your questions, and I am told that we do have some questions posted in our HIMSCon app.